Well, happy Monday, boys and girls.
Hey, Tunes.
We're here. Andrew, are you here?
I'm here. I'm in Greater Safety Harbor Land. It's a little
I'm
bit
up in
soggy.
I'm up in Trinity, Florida. Andrew refers to this as Newport Richie, which either one works as a
Because
mailing
it
address.
is. It is.
The weather
It's
wasn't great.
Newport trying to rebrand itself.
I decided not to make the drive down. I'm sorry. So we're
And because of
remote.
that, I decided to wear a tie. I would have worn a tie if we were going out to lunch afterwards and stuff, but no. It works out well. Timmy, I've got grades due. It's that time of the semester. It's that time of the
Okay.
year. We think we're calming down post-Easter in Churchland, but that has not been the case.
No.
No. It's stupid busy, and that's okay. Because, Tim, yesterday was Sunday.
And this is the morning after.
Welcome to the Morning After Ministry Show, a caffeine-fueled look back on the week and ministry that was.
So we're here. It's Monday. This is what Andrew and I have done for, 295 Mondays. Not necessarily in a row, but pretty close.
So many Mondays.
It's a lot of Mondays.
That's a lot of Mondays, Tim.
It's our excuse to hang out, to talk the weekend ministry that was. We intentionally don't tell each other things now throughout the week just so we can see each other's expression live.
Hey, save it for the show.
A very common text between us is save it for the show, or the other common text between us is no, we can't talk about this on the show.
Yeah, we have lots of those as well. So it's like if we're actually getting the real juicy things about what's going on at each other's churches, that means that that would be such great content for the show, but we can't use it because people are involved.
Andy, it was a big day yesterday. It was Mother's Day.
You guys do half a dozen services, not actually.
We have three.
But we
have three.
We just have the one.
Yeah.
And we have one at 10 o'clock, and at about 9:40, the sky had opened up in a way that it has not opened up in probably 6 or 7 months around here.
It's been a while. It has been a while since that.
It was torrential. And
Which looks great on the Lakeview live stream.
But your guys is, with all the windows and everything, that made the lighting in the room so much better.
Yep.
I was thinking at about 10 till, man, I wonder if anyone's showing up this morning, because the parking lot was 70% empty at that point because it was torrential. And then it stopped raining for about 4 minutes, and in came everybody. And I realized that Easter was just last month, but it was, as Mother's Day typically is, the biggest Sunday since Easter.
Yep. Nope, we experienced the same. I saw lots of moms hugging their adult children as they walked in to sit next to mom, and I loved all of the things. It was a very beautiful thing.
Very cool.
It was sweet. We had a couple of jam-packed services even in the rain, which was fantastic to see. But Andy, I got a question for you. What did you guys do? You have a history of doing something fun for moms and dads on these days. Did you guys do something fun for mom yesterday?
We did. We didn't do the
Of course, it was sunny in Scranton one time a year.
Yeah, because it's Scranton. Scranton takes Mother's Day very seriously.
Also, who is Ben Hailstone? This can't be City Lights Church. That's someone else.
He must have
no
descended into private browsing or something. He didn't want the church's YouTube history to show. That's the only thing.
We obviously cannot plug City Lights Church if City Lights is not going to watch the show. So that's just how this works.
It's a tragedy.
Andy, what did you guys do? Did you get one year? You hand delivered stuff to moms. I think it was during COVID or something. I don't know. You and your
during
boys were.
COVID, my boys and I drove to every mom's house in the church, which is easy to do when you're a church of 50-ish or so people back then.
It's so next level.
No, we did flowers and candy like we do most years, but towards the middle.
I'm not in my office. I don't have a church office. Do you have what you gave out yesterday near you? Can we see it?
We don't, because the leftover flowers were divvied up by the people who were here
makes sense.
Latest.
That makes sense.
And then the candy, I was handing some out to the preschool teachers this morning, but we surely took care of the flowers and candy. I didn't get any of those because when we realized that we had discussed the possibility of an idea but the idea never was fleshed out a few weeks before Mother's Day about the Mother's Day food situation because we eat together
Mm.
as a church. It was determined, hey, I'll take care of the food, and Shirley was taking care of the flowers and candy. So we have like the little fancy frou-frou truffles, and then we got roses for the moms. And instead of handing them the roses when they walked in, we said, hey, why don't you grab a rose on your way out so that it doesn't wilt and die in the hour or so here in the room. And so we had some roses in the fellowship hall and some roses in the worship center for moms that weren't sticking around. But
Yep.
then, Tim, I went into the men's group Saturday morning and said, fellas, hey, this has been proposed. Sorry for the short notice.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, cool. Like two of them was like, yeah, we can help. We did full on Denny's Grand Slam style
Hey.
breakfast for the whole church in the fellowship hall after church. We got a bunch of the pre-cooked bacon that you
Yep.
just have to reheat and it doesn't get grease everywhere. And then we
Mm-hmm.
did eggs and pancakes and then fruit and a few other things. But so we had fresh cooked to order pancakes, bags, and Aiken. Hang on.
You said that right.
Pancakes,
You said that right.
eggs,
That's how you.
and
That's how you
bacon.
pronounce that.
Eggs and Aiken.
Now, I guess my question for Safety Harborland is: does this take the place of the Mother's Day brunch? So you guys didn't have to go out to fancy brunch. You just hang out at church and do Mother's Day brunch there.
So we were doing all the things, and my wife, who is a mother, ended up not going into service because she and my father were the ones in the kitchen, kind of handling all of the things during service with the live stream on,
Sure.
which was very sacrificial of them. And so I said to my wife after church, "What do you want for lunch?" And she said, "I kind of just want to go home because I ate I ate plenty." And so yeah, we had a good mix of the people that typically would stick around after church and eat with us and be at church for an hour or so in the fellowship hall that
Yep.
were not sticking around because they were going out to brunch.
I wondered
And
about
then
that.
we had some extra people that were like, well, I guess if there's extra flowers and candy in the fellowship hall, maybe I will stick around. So we had about our same crowd, but it was, or same numbers, but not quite the same crowd. So that was a little bit different. And Tim, another thing I didn't put in the show notes, but
Yeah.
was really cool that happened yesterday. Or you
What's up,
remember I told you about we had a college student in our church who was in a horrific accident back in
Yep.
February. She was at the
Mm-hmm.
University of Florida and was
Yep.
struck by a car, and everything was touch and
Scary.
go, and we didn't know what was happening. She was then from Shands in Gainesville, went to a rehab hospital up in Atlanta. Well, yesterday, in she walked with her parents.
That's
So that
cool.
was a very, very big deal. Lots of
That's huge.
people's eyeballs started leaking when they saw her. So that was a pretty cool thing. What about you
Now,
guys? I didn't see the giant. There was no lawnmower photo booth, although the soggy
there
weather.
was a giant photo booth. I probably have some pictures somewhere. It was a
The Miller family pictures I saw were with the rainy field in the background.
Yeah, that was Mom's choice. So Steffi wanted the rainy field. She thought that was a nice backdrop. But we did have a backdrop. Hold please. It was very, very cool. Let's see. I might even have someone
church
in. Oh,
Photo backdrop companies make all of their money between Easter and Mother's Day? Is this like the Super Bowl for them where they're just like,
I'm guessing.
hey, we're going to get fancy pictures two times
we
in
had
a
kind of
month?
there's Brett. We had like a little bit of
Hello.
a. So there was there was
Party.
actually two different setups. One was like for little kids, and the other one was a bit more of a fancy tea party setup. I really hope Brett watches this episode now. And you
I'm
could
guessing
sit.
that is the little kid one based on
That's the little kid one, and then you have the other one on the
plastic.
other side. So it was the theme was a tea party with Mom, which then lent
Oh,
its
that's
way
right. I remember.
into the service. So on the way in, moms were given teacups with little cards and maybe a chocolate in there. I'm not sure what was all in the little package, but they had teacups. It was very, very pretty. They were all hand done by some ladies in our church, and we have quite a few ladies in our church now. So they hand did these little. I mean, they were all gift wrapped and passed out beautifully. It was one of the best giveaways we've ever done on Mother's Day. It was very, very fancy, very, very pretty. The
Now,
moms
was there
seemed to
tea
really enjoy it.
involved?
Say what?
Was there tea involved?
There might have been a tea bag in the
Tea bag.
tea.
Yeah, come on.
I don't
You don't
know. I don't know
tea
what all
bag.
was there.
You
We
got to
had
go at
tea.
least first flush, or you got to get the fancy loose leaf stuff.
Something with,
And
look, Andy, you know the drill. I had nothing to do with it. It was Maureen Rudkin. She made it look awesome. It was
see,
fantastic. And she said, I'm not
I'm
going
like
to tell you
you.
guys what we're doing. It's going to be a complete surprise. So I had no clue what was coming until Mother's Day morning, which was awesome.
There you go. Yeah, I had a lot to do with ours because I was the one doing the Sam's Club and getting the liquid eggs, because when you're making eggs for 55
Yep.
or 60 people, you need
Hmm.
to get that figured out. And apparently, the egg shortage is still a thing because I had to go to 4 different places to get enough cartons of liquid egg, but it all worked out and it was beautiful. And you walked into the fellowship hall and it just, pancakes are the easiest thing in the world to make, and they just smell so good.
Smell good. They
They,
taste good.
well, yeah, but that you walk in and it just wafts up everywhere. It was
It's
very
the
exciting.
pancake and syrup sent together that really fills the
Hmm.
room.
And Shirley got a couple things of the real fancy maple syrup as well, so we didn't have Aunt Jemima on the tables. So
It's not
that
Aunt
always
Jemima
helps.
anymore, but sure.
I think it is again.
No.
Yeah, because it went to like Millhouse, and then there was like a thing where I'm pretty sure it's Aunt Jemima again. Aunt
It's
Jemima's
Publix
back.
brand. That's all I use. We've only used Publix brand for
Oh,
50 years.
okay.
We don't buy
So
anything other than the store brand. CJ says,
you
"Did you all stay?" Okay, this was the next question that I had for you. Did you stay in series, or did you do a separate
you
one-off for Mother's Day / coming up on Father's Day? What'd you guys do?
well, you go first because I've got quite the story for you.
Okay, got it. First of all, and then the other thing I had for us was, what did you honor moms in any way? Is it awkward? This is such a weird holiday for a lot of people. Father's Day doesn't seem to be as emotional for people. It just is. But Mother's Day, like, we had people tell us we're not coming to church today because of how painful today is. Like, that's a normal thing now.
To me,
So I was very, very sensitive with how we handled it. I did acknowledge the moms in the room and the heartache and the joy and the tension that we live in when we celebrate moms. So that was all built into the sermon. It lent itself well because we were in 1 Corinthians 13. Heard of it? Paul's
mom is patient,
famous
mom is kind.
Paul's famous love chapter. So I was able to do a Mother's Day bent on 1 Corinthians 13, though it was not a Mother's Day specific sermon. We're not going to do a Father's Day specific sermon either. I'll just scream at the dads and read 1 Corinthians like we do every year. Although it's not always 1 Corinthians, but it is always. I think it's historical, right? To scream at the dads and then to care for the moms. Like, that's what we do. So on
Yeah,
Mother's Day, you're
pretty
very
much what it is.
gentle,
It's, moms, you're the best. You're a hero. You can do nothing
and then
wrong.
dads
Dad,
is like,
step your game up.
who the
You're
heck do you
horrible.
think you are? That's when you pull out
Yeah,
your best Driscoll impersonation.
that's
So
pretty much
we
how it
were.
works.
Yeah, we were in series, 1 Corinthians. We'll be in 1 Corinthians all the way through the end of June. So both Mother's Day and Father's Day will be Paul's letter to a very messed up and divided church.
Gotcha. Well, we were in our third and final week of our Teach Us to Pray series. So we were in Luke 11, and I, you know, finished everything. And really, we didn't do a whole lot. It was that moms, we're so glad you're here. Happy Mother's Day. We've got
Yep.
stuff for you. We're going to do the food stuff after. But
Yep.
it wasn't that, and I don't do the big pastoral prayer in the service. Shirley does that. And so
Right.
that helps. I kind of pray
So
at
she
the
was
end of
able
the call to worship.
to build Mother's Day into
Yeah.
that pastoral prayer.
Yes. Everything Shirley does is motherly, so that works out really well. We don't
That
have,
is true.
there's no, because sometimes like if you or I try to do it, it's like, okay, you're patronizing or whatever, but that's not
Yeah.
how anything Shirley does comes across. So that works out really well. Sometimes that's the
I
secret
will
weapon to have.
say I tried. So most of my church history illustrations were either moms or wives, and that was intentional. So almost all of my illustrations were very motherly in nature.
So we're in First Corinthians, or sorry, you're in First Corinthians. We are
I am.
in Luke, when kind of Luke's recording of the Lord's Prayer, which is a little bit different, and then that goes right into the parable of the persistent neighbor, and so that's where we were at. And during the second song, I go grab my iPad and I hit and Dropbox and hit and Dropbox and hit and Dropbox,
Mm.
and my notes from the night before that I had gone through are not there.
Oh no.
And I am baffled. I have no idea what is happening. Now, one thing that worked out
It's not
really
a good
well is
feeling.
as I was going through Saturday night, I was like, oh, this is a text and a very similar manuscript to something that I did in 2019. And so I had opened the one in 2019 and lifted a couple of paragraphs from that. And so I was
Sure.
familiar with that manuscript as well. But
Yeah.
my actual sermon notes from that were supposed to be from for yesterday morning, I could not find anywhere. I like sprinted to my office. I was like, "Oh, I'm holding the door to this family coming in late," when really I was running out the back door of the worship center to get to my office to try to refresh on my laptop, and still I have no idea what happened. I mean, I like 3,400 words just gone, disappeared. I don't know what I possibly could have done.
I don't
I was doing
understand.
open recent. I
So do
was,
you always just go to Dropbox?
yeah, I save to my drop. I save everything in
Yeah,
I have a current
I get
sermon
that.
folder on
Yep,
Dropbox,
I
or
have
a
that.
current series folder, and that's where everything gets saved.
I then
And
export it out of Dropbox into a PDF, and then I actually email it to myself. So I'm pulling up my email to
now
myself every Sunday.
I don't have any email on my iPad.
It's
My
the only
iPad
I
is
only have. Yeah, I don't have texting
Dropbox.
or anything else. Yep, it's I have Dropbox. I have my email, and then I have what my Bible, whatever else I need.
Well, it was
So
terrifying, and so
Dropbox was connecting, but it wasn't in the folders. What you're saying?
yeah, it was
Mm.
user error on my part. I still have no idea what I did or
Jimmy
where.
Tammy
Like
Larkins, good to see you. Good to see you.
what up? And so I was going through and trying to find it, and finally I was like, you know what? I am out of time, and I
Yeah,
knew I had the manuscript from a few years before, and I was familiar because I was doing my last read through
but
at about
that's
midnight
not
on
the manuscript
Saturday
you
night.
read through.
It's not the manuscript that I read through, but
That's
I feel like
scary.
the I'm trying out. You know what? I've got my slides. I know it well enough that I can stay within the framework, and some things might be different. And so, Timmy, I
I
preached
mean, no one
with
else is
a
gonna know.
different. Well, now dozens and dozens of potential listeners will know,
Billions of people
but
around the world know.
it was it was a pretty scary thing because it
That's
was
really
it
scary.
was a, obviously Mother's Day is a big day. You know, you're gonna have extra things there. I had gotten to church a little bit early to do all the food stuff in the kitchen, and whenever I'm there early, I always think, "Oh, look at me! I've gotten stuff done. I'm ahead of the game." And then something happens, and I am reminded painfully that I am not in as good a shape as I think I am, and that was a whole new level of gut check. But it worked. I think there were 2 or 3 pauses that were probably longer than they were supposed to be when I was like, "Hey, what was I gonna say next?" And, had my quickly scribbled notes there in front of me.
This is
But,
our daily
whew,
reminder from CJ that this is what happens when you aren't led by the Spirit and you are instead led by notes. So thank you for
listen,
that. Jesus Juke,
sometimes
CJ.
the Spirit uses notes.
I would hope the Holy Spirit is leading in your preparation as well as on your Sunday preaching, possibly in both.
I hope so.
Andy, that's a really
But
scary story. I
that
feel
was
like that's
yeah,
a
that
that's
was,
a nightmare that I have had like reoccurring over the years where something happens with my manuscript and it doesn't pull up. So, true story, I keep my iPhone next to my iPad for that very reason. So if something were to happen to my iPad and it goes down, I have the backup on my iPhone next to me, which again, it's not as large a font as I would, but it would get the job done. Like I would have to, you know, you still have to
yeah.
know it pretty well, but as long as I could see where I'm at, I could keep the flow going. For me, and this is for you, CJ. When you are doing multiple services, like you have to have a consistent time, and you don't have to have notes for
Yeah.
that, but notes does like a manuscript really helps you stay within that time frame because if I don't
Within a
if I don't
35, 40 second
if I don't
margin between
end
service.
on time for first and second service, then there's going to be issues with kids ministry. There's going to be issues of parking. So there are logistical things that have to happen when you have multiple services on a Sunday. So
Yeah.
I would argue that the manuscript helps with that. I do feel a bit more freedom in third service where I don't have to stay glued to the manuscript as much as I do in first and second. But sometimes, Andy, this is true. When you aren't glued to your manuscript, that's when
You
bad things
say
happen.
stupid things.
And
You
you back
say
it
things
up and
that
you're like
maybe
that.
aren't heretical, but they're definitely not orthodox. Or you try to be funny, and
That's where it gets me.
trying too hard to be funny is what gets you in the most trouble.
I'll think of something funny on the spot, and then I need to try that out in the 8 o'clock service, because if it doesn't land, I can take it out for the 9:30 and the 11.
Yeah.
CJ says, do you guys both use manuscripts? I've gone to that more as a senior leader than I did with youth ministry. I actually did not manuscript a ton in youth ministry until we started writing for DYM. I have only preached with manuscripts since I've become the lead pastor. Jimmy, totally agree. Preparation is also listening to the Holy Spirit, always being prepared. Yep, totally agree. You've been a manuscript guy for a long time.
Yeah, I used to be like the notes on a napkin is all I need.
Yeah.
And then again, about the time we started to write for DYM was about the time that I also started to be asked to preach fairly regularly in Sunday morning service at my previous church. Yep. And that is, again, multiple services and needing to be consistent with time and everything. And so that was probably 2014 that I really kind of switched to I'm going to be full on manuscripter instead of.
I think 2014 was the year I switched over to manuscripts. So I did 4 years of notes and then 11 years of manuscript preaching. Oh, I absolutely prefer it. So Andy, it was Mother's Day. We had to navigate it. It was delicate in some ways, but lots of fun. We love honoring our moms. Something else was a lot of fun this week in Lakeview land. We had 2 new Lakeview babies born this week within days of each other. One of which I heard about from a family member on Sunday morning, because the baby was born, I think, during second service. So I got to make the announcement during third service. I didn't say the name of who the family was because I didn't want to, I don't know if they had announced it yet, but it was just, I was excited to say it. But I had some interesting discussions this week, and I wanted to hear how you are navigating this, because I don't know if you know this, but if you looked in the mirror recently, you realize we are now old.
We're old. Do you remember when we were young and we were like the young and exciting option?
I remember that. I also remember when we were still in our baby phase, us Millers over here.
Yeah.
I remember our lead pastor visiting, within hours. Yeah. Like it was just expected that, hey, if you're giving birth, the pastor is going to be in that hospital room holding that baby, praying over that baby. Typically, one of the first visitors for all 5 Miller babies was a pastor. Andrew, those are not the days we live in anymore.
No.
So we're navigating. We're
like, excuse me.
Yeah.
Like, I and a big part of it is like, I don't even want my mom here. Why would I want you here?
So we're navigating this really interesting era of hospital visits and home visits as pastors, where we have to now be very cautious and loving and pastoral. And it's now, hey, so basically my shtick, my spiel now is, I'm available, you give me the go ahead and I will be there. As opposed to, it used to be just a few years ago, I'm on my way, I'll see you soon. What do you want for dinner? Like I'm picking you up food on the way. That's the way I always did. Like you just grab food with the hospital. I've got your meal. We'll grab a bite together. I'll stay for a few minutes. I'll pray over your baby and I'll leave. Now it is, and the text I got this morning was, hey, I've got Tuesday and Thursday open. Let me know what time and I'll put it on my calendar, because all of our other time slots are booked up.
Yeah.
Like that is a different era than the drop and go style that, both of us were accustomed to just a few years ago.
Or how about this? When our firstborn, I'm trying to think of, I think it was called Ustream, maybe. It was like one of the first live stream softwares available.
Yeah.
And we would be like, hey, and we were in Texas and family was in Florida. And so it was like, here's the link if you want to see what baby Landon is doing. And now we're having people in the church that, baby's 3 weeks old and we don't even know the name. I would be thrilled to know the gender. I could tell mom was pregnant, but there's been no baby announcement. There's been no nothing. And then it's kind of like, surprise. I have a former student who, she and her husband had just moved across the country and for his work. And it's also odd that I now have former students who are old enough to be making cross-country moves because of promotions and things, because in my brain I'm 19, and so that shouldn't make any sense. But they just moved across the country, and she had kind of gone dark on social for a while, and she was someone who was very not a dark on social person. And it turns out she had gone dark because she was pregnant and didn't announce it to anybody.
Wow.
Like
which is
like 5
actually
people
happening more and
knew.
more now.
And then and so the first post was, "Hey, look, here's a new baby that I have." And it's like, oh, okay, so that's different than how we used to do things. Cool,
It
cool,
is.
cool.
I'm not saying it's better or worse. It is. I think different is the right
But it's
word.
different.
I think we live in a world now where everyone is so afraid of offending anyone else that we're just like, you know what? I'm just
Yeah,
not going to say anything. And so now
yeah,
that has like bled over into like baby announcements, which is kind of
yeah,
weird for me because I'm a big fan of celebrating new life. So when someone is just like completely dark, I'm like, I get it and I respect that. But at the same time, like as a church fam, like we want to celebrate. You know what I mean? So it's kind of tough.
yeah.
But hey, you honor those families, you love those families. If they're like, we don't really want to see you right now, we'll let you know when. Then as a pastor, you say, yep, sounds good.
Cool.
Like
But
that's
also
what you
like
do.
12 or 15 years ago when we were first becoming first-time parents, um, well, almost 16 years ago in your part, but so my oldest just turned 15, your oldest is about to turn 16.
Yep.
There, like, we had, we hadn't seen people be overexposed on socials yet. The people that are
Right.
16 years younger than us grew up watching everybody else post way too much of their life online, including
Yep.
us. We
Mm-hmm.
probably overshared a bit. And so now kind of the
100%. No, I'm
pendulum
guilty
is
of it.
shifting to hey, maybe we're going to pump the brakes on this.
And this
But
is
yeah,
this is
it's
the
definitely
tension we live in, Matt. He says it's such a difficult situation. Last year, I had a couple who was very offended I didn't show up, and another one who texted me and said, "Please wait until we get home to visit." That said, I do what you do, Tim. I offer that I'm
yeah,
here and would love to come visit, but for them to tell me when it's a good time, I think that's the best approach. I
yeah.
have tried the I just show up thing before, and I'm like,
Like Michael Scott with the balloons and the framed
yeah.
newspaper.
Yeah, not so much. So now it is
Not,
a
not a big
a
one.
loving pastoral text. I'm here. I'm praying. You give me the green light, and I will be there. And if I don't hear from you, I am not offended at all. We also do a
That's
meal train. CJ says we do meal train for all new births. We do have meal trains going. We're getting those going for our new births right now. He says, wife and I sign up, we take a meal, use that. And Steph and I have done that in the past because I don't like going by myself. I love bringing my wife. It seems I don't know. It's helpful. Maybe you can't do this in some context, but to have my wife next to me seems to be helpful for both mom and baby in the room. So
see,
I prefer not to do these alone.
I'm more comfortable in a hospital setting than my wife is.
Yeah.
Now, having given birth to 4 healthy baby boys, that helps.
Yep.
But my wife lost her mom. Speaking of Mother's Day stuff,
Mm,
one of our family traditions is we go to the cemetery on Mother's Day
yep.
because my wife lost her mom while we were in college, and so it's kind of morbidly hilarious because it's at Sylvan Abbey, which if you're
Yep.
not from here, you don't know where that is. But they don't have headstones. It's the marker.
Right.
Or there's the markers are on the ground, so
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of hard to see. And so my boys make a game out of who can find their grandma's grave first. None of them ever knew her, so they're
Right.
running through the cemetery on Mother's Day trying to find where Grandma June's grave is. And so my wife is not one who loves being in hospitals. My mom was a nurse. So
Mm,
growing up, like once I got my driver's license, one of the
that's
first
what you
I
did.
was like, hey, if I go to the hospital, I can get free lunch with my mom, right? So I, I am comfortable in hospitals or in and around hospitals. So I don't know that she and I have ever gone to see a newborn together.
When you get the chance, it is fun. I prefer. I'm good either way. I like bringing a meal at the same time because then it gives you an out because you don't want to overextend the welcome. That's a big thing when you're
Yeah,
visiting new families. It's just, hey, here's a meal. I pray. How are you doing? And there's not like any lingering. It's I know you guys are hungry. Here's your meal. You can eat.
yeah,
We love you. Jimmy says we didn't even take our firstborn out till he was at least. And this is the other side of it. Some families are
yeah.
like we're good. We're going to be home for a long time. He said it was a month before he took his firstborn out, and then even at that, it was very little. And that still happens today, which
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
I remember, so our firstborn was the full 6 weeks before he left the house. And then when we would come to church, Melissa would have a gallon jug of hand sanitizer that
Yep.
she would have with her
Yep.
because it was the youth group baby. And then
Oh yeah.
everybody was wanting to, because we had a bunch of middle school girls that wanted to babysit and everything. And then by the time we got to 3 and 4, they were at church at like the 8-day mark. Like, all right,
Same. All of ours were.
When can we
Yep.
drop him off in the nursery?
Yeah, we were dropping off in nursery at like a month old, sometimes less. It was, yeah. But I think again, not with our firstborn, but by the time
No.
3, 4, and 5 was born, that's, yep.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Tim,
it's kind of fun to
we had a
just
situation-
smile and nod with some of the young families, and you just like you had to learn, like you get it, like you didn't want to get advice from anybody. You just let them walk through it. That's part of parenting.
Do you remember that commercial of the firstborn, secondborn? It's like the firstborn that takes both parents to leave the house, and they've got the checklist of everything, and then the secondborn, they grab a handful of Cheerios and put it in their pocket, and like, all right, let's go. Yep, that's,
remember it well. Hey, speaking of parenting, it is the end of year chaos for us. We have lots of kids in lots of schools, meaning award ceremonies, graduations, end of the year field trips, last second grades. I mean, all of the above is happening right now. How are you doing? How is the Larson family holding up? I know it's a lot.
Well, we found out literally yesterday.
Sunday.
So our oldest is at yesterday was Sunday. Yesterday, I got a text from the athletic director at the Christian school where my oldest is, because I'm one of the coaches there, and so we've got a banquet this Friday night. They've got their big play on Thursday night, and then the graduation is on Sunday because it's a Lutheran school, so they do the graduation as like part of the church service. So Frank Gill is preaching for me here next Sunday.
Good guy.
And so we were getting all that stuff squared away. I did not realize that at this school, the 8th graders are not expected to go to school after the graduation. Like their exams are done. It's part of like the 8th grade privilege.
And when is graduation?
This Sunday. So my oldest is doing, and he's doing he's doing an online program through Liberty for high school, at least next year is the plan. And so like, oh dude, you've got like 4 days left of having to get up and be on time for school. That's crazy. That snuck up on us. So that's happening. But on top of that, I had a semester end Friday. So grades are due Wednesday. Melissa has all of her end of the year IEPs because my wife's a special ed teacher. So that's a whole other thing where you've got to have the individualized education plans for all the kids done at the end of every year. So it is full on chaos mode.
You guys are sprinting to the finish line right now.
5th grade, and we're at three different schools for the 4 boys. So it's chaotic.
That's exhausting. We are inching closer to the finish line. However, 2 of my kids are going into very competitive sports starting in the summer. So
no break.
This will be the weirdest.
We've had all the Aaron football conversations. Is it Zoe doing cheer?
Zoe got into competitive cheer. So that actually starts this week and then into the summer. So we have to plan. We used to just go on vacation when we wanted to. Now we have to plan our vacations around these competitions and practices. And it's part of the drill. High school football is high school football. And apparently that starts June 1st, and you're practicing at minimum 4 days a week, sometimes more. And you get 2 weeks off of summer. So it's like, there you go. Like, we have to take our vacation during one or both of those weeks.
I was talking to Melissa about just our summer plans and what the future is going to look like. And she was saying like, well, if we want to spend more time up in Arkansas, because Melissa's family's in Arkansas, we go up there every summer. Like, Melissa, we are running out of summers. Like our oldest has 4 summers left before he graduates, but the first 2 are not super into team sports. The second 2 are into every team sport they can think of.
So it's coming.
And so I'm like, Melissa, we are quickly running out of summers because we don't get to choose our summer schedule anymore, and this is life. And then at some point we'll be empty nesters and we'll be begging for something to do. But right now it's kind of scary and exhausting.
It's a lot of fun. It's one of those. It's interesting because typically when you think of busy ministry seasons, you don't think of May as like, this is a really busy. But for us, I think in our life stage with where our kids are at, May ends up being like right behind Christmas and Easter. Like it is a busy ministry season.
They call it May-summer. It's because all of the things happen at once and they happen in quick succession. And
it also so happens that my youth pastor and his wife had a baby, and Frank and I said, hey, we will take over youth group until you come back. So I'm on the hook for youth group for the next, month and a half.
I meant to name this episode "We're Both Youth Pastors" again.
Yeah.
Then
I mean,
I forgot.
I
Yeah,
even
you guys
mentioned
will
that
talk.
last week, Frank and I tag teamed Maytastic Day
You were the
1, which
youth
was
pastor.
Water Wars. And we held, I mean, one of the most epic water nights you've ever seen at Lakeview. We just went all out. The kids were exhausted. They were cheering. They were screaming. At one point, high schoolers jumped into the lake. I mean, I lost control. It was
saw that.
awesome. It was a ton of
All you
fun.
need is an alligator attack to make Lakeview go global.
Look, if you live in Florida, you know that if you don't feed a gator, the gators run from you. So as long as no one has fed the gator at Lakeview, it's not going to attack you.
That you know about.
That's the thing. We took a bit of a risk there. I scared the guys and said, "What's that coming towards you?" And you've never heard high school guys freak out so hard in your life. It was awesome. They got out of the water real quick, so that was good.
Well, that's good. I still
Andrew-
think that you could do a beautiful little beach thing for baptisms there at Lakeview. It'd be wonderful.
The gators are what scare me. I mean, for baptisms.
Tim,
I'm okay with high school. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's fine. Something I didn't tell you about because I wanted to save it for the show, and because I thought you would judge me because you're a very judgy person, Tim.
Very judgy.
Timmy, we had a baby dedication yesterday that was not part of the service. So it's a family
Excuse me?
that I'm pseudo connected to.
What do you mean it wasn't part of the
who-
service? Like they just happened to do it?
Wasn't part of the- No, they asked if I could do this for their family, and
Yeah.
they do not worship with us regularly, but their family does. But I've known them for
When
about
did
10 or
they
12
ask?
last week.
Okay.
But
Okay.
here's the thing, and I don't want to put it's personal information out there, but their infant has a pretty major health concern and
Mhm.
some things coming up, and that has got them talking about faith and what they want for their child and stuff, and so they
Understand.
reached out with some questions, and so I kind of said, well, here's how we do this typically, here's how we would do that, and they said, could we do this but just have our immediate family be there because we don't really know the whole church all that much. We don't want everyone to know.
CJ says no
Yeah.
notes. Now spur of the moment baby dedication. Andrew is going full
We're going to
on
have
charismatic.
spontaneous baptisms next week.
Be
It'll
on the
be
lookout for a
great.
fire tunnel at Safety Harbor Assemblies of God Church coming real soon.
But it turned out to be this beautiful, beautiful thing. But all week I kept thinking, if Tim knows that I'm doing this, he's going to mock me for it. He's gonna,
I'm not
what's
going to
the
mock
point
you.
of dedicating the baby if you're not including the congregation in the promises. But there was a big extended family that is a part of our church,
okay.
and so
I'm okay with it.
It was
I mean,
special.
I get the
Also-
argument where like in the dedication
He's
ceremony, you
left
do
the whole
you include the
time.
congregation.
Yeah, I think, but with, hang on, math. So, but with 7 other people being
Yeah.
there, so there's a community of other people around them so there was still the we do portion of the vows that you're making
Right.
when you're doing the dedication, but
Yeah.
it was a really cool kind of crescendo to the Mother's Day stuff.
I'm a big fan of the baby dedications on Mother's Day. I wanted to work that in this year, but what we've done at Lakeview is we've just basically done on-demand dedications. So you reach out,
Yeah.
we set up a date because families like to have their families there. So if the family picks the Sunday as well as the service, so I don't do it during all 3. I just ask the family what Sunday's best for you, what service is best for you, and that's when the baby dedication happens. Now, it
Let
would
me
be
ask
kind
you
of cool to have like 20 dedications in one weekend on Mother's Day. That would be awesome. I've seen churches do that. But at the same time, allowing families to tell their family and give them time to get there like you did, that's kind of cool too. And it's also special because it's one family at a time.
Yeah. So being that we have some peculiarities about in our denomination, for all intents and purposes, kind of low church. We were talking about this on Practically last week, or I guess it was this when Frank was talking about the liturgical elements in the church where he was preaching. But there are some more liturgical elements that we do as well. Do you allow for? Do you make space for families that appoint godparents when you're doing baby dedications?
Hasn't happened yet. So I've wondered that.
Okay.
Like, I guess I would just have that conversation with the parent. I have not had anyone ask for a baby baptism or godparents yet. So have not
Okay.
had to navigate those conversations. I think what's happened is our families have seen that we do baby dedications and we do them pretty
Mhm.
regularly. I think regularly enough to where families are saying, "Oh, I want to have my baby dedicated." And they see the process. So that's kind of what's been happening. I've had a few reach out, "Hey, I don't go to your church. I'd like to do this." And we've like had conversations back and forth, and it ended up just not working out. It didn't make sense for what they were wanting to do and basically just use our space for and
Mhm.
use a random pastor that they didn't know. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you had to navigate those conversations?
Yes and no. I think we have enough people in our congregation that grew up in more mainline traditions that there are people used to the idea of godparents. And I think really when we are asking the congregation, will you support the family in this? Or yeah, that's basically taking the whole congregation on that
Yes,
traditional role of godparents anyway. And so
correct.
they're built into kind of the vows, if you will, that we put into a baby dedication
Yep,
anyway. And so it's whether it's to the whole congregation or to just one specific couple or
sure.
a couple people. So I don't think it's too difficult. I think obviously we're not saying, hey, if anything happens, will you adopt this child? That's not part of the promise there either. But
No,
the idea that, hey, these people are going to take a specific interest in the child's faith, I think, is important. But again, that's what we ask the whole congregation to do. But
yep,
when you're a congregation the size of Lakeviews, especially, you can all say, sure, we'll be the congregation that'll look after this child's well-being,
right.
but you need specific people to be willing to go out of their way to have those difficult conversations and to be those people. So I think it's an
Agreed.
interesting component,
It
but
is
very different from how you and I in Fundy Baptist world were
very different.
brought up.
Speaking of difficult conversations, I had one last week. I don't know that I've shared this with you yet, but
You not, because I am intrigued.
a friend of mine brought something to my attention where, Andy, have you ever goofed before? Like you just kind of had a mental lapse and you didn't even realize you had a mental lapse?
All the livelong day.
So that happened. He brought it to my attention. There was no moral issue, nothing like that. It was just, hey, you kind of missed the ball here in my life on this sort of a big day for me, and it happened last year. And I was like, oh my gosh. He's like, do you remember when you texted me? And it was really sweet because we went out to dinner, and he said, hey man, I just got to talk to you about something. And I was like, yeah, whatever you got to say it. And you could tell like he had been praying over this for a long time, and he clearly was like, I need to make this right because in my heart there's been something off. And it was one of those, I had no idea. I was super proud of him for coming to me. I didn't know I had dropped the ball. And you know how it is. Like when when the words were coming out of his mouth, I immediately like inside got very defensive, and I
Yeah.
had every excuse in the book ready to just spit out. And it kind of had that like Holy Spirit nudge of, this is where you shut up and you just take this. And I was like, okay, one of those moments. So that's what I did. Like I didn't open my mouth. I just took it and realized this is an area where I can grow in and I can learn from. And at the tail end of the conversation, I just kind of backtracked a little bit and said, if we were to do this all over again, what would have been really helpful for me as your pastor to do in that scenario? And he said, actually, here's what would have been really cool. And he walked me through it like step by step. And I was like, oh, that's really good. So now moving forward, I kind of have a baseline of, hey, when that happens again, it's going to happen again. It's a super common
Yeah.
thing for people. And I have kind of a baseline of this is really, so I actually put it into practice this week. Kind of had some very similar situations pop up, and it ended up working out really well. So it was a moment that I was able to grow from and learn from. Our relationship is still fine and it's solid. He's reached out since then, and who's very thankful for the listening ear. And I actually thanked him for his boldness, because I think that does take courage to go to someone that
Oh
you
yeah.
look up to and you trust, and is a spiritual figure in your life, to say, hey, there's something we got to talk through. I'm not
But
saying
and
like
it's also weird when your pastor is your friend, and this
correct.
is what we navigate
That's the
this
tension
all the
that
time.
we live in. I think there's
Yeah.
a fine line between like open season on your pastor, because pastors are not perfect,
Yeah.
and you could easily have
Well, you're
quirks
not.
that I'm definitely not. Where people can have quirks that they just don't like about you. I think that's a danger. Like if there's just something you do that people don't like about you and they just want to blast against you, like that's not okay. But if there was something specific that you maybe could have handled a situation a little better, and they spend some time praying on it and then come to you like Matthew 18 style. Again, no like huge moral issue or sinful thing, but it was just something that could have been handled better. And they come to you lovingly and gracefully. I think we in ministry should be like, hey, let's learn from that. Like that was a really sweet moment. I actually used it in staff meeting the next day as kind of a teachable moment for the rest of our staff of, hey, I know we typically want to have a posture of defense, but maybe every now and then we have a very different posture of just receiving whatever it is we need to receive in that moment. And maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something, but for me, that was actually something. So interesting moment for me. And we can chat off the air more specifics, but nothing crazy, nothing earth shattering. It was just one of those like,
I'm gonna need some more information, Tim.
No, it was just one of those like, I could have handled that better. You know what I mean? Like, and you've been there. Like, I could have done a better job there. So I don't know if you've had to walk through something like that, or if you've ever had maybe
more often than I would like.
Maybe a rebuke that has not gone so well, where I don't know. I've taken a few where I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna sit through this. But this was one of those where I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna take it.
Well, Timmy, I'm proud of you. I'm proud you did not defend yourself when you shouldn't have defended yourself.
Not saying it was easy.
Well,
Ronald says, I remember this show and these friends, and I love you.
Ronald Long, what's up, buddy?
What a sweet
I remember
guy.
you.
I don't know if anybody out there has handled rebukes well or not so well, or maybe had some not so kind rebukes in your ministry career. I think we've all been there. We've been on both sides of this.
We have.
So how do we navigate these things? How do you know? I guess one question that I had from a staff member was actually really good when I was sharing the story. It was like, okay, like that's a good example, but how do you know that when it's something you should listen to as opposed to something that is clearly off the wall and they're just emotional and taking it out on you? Like, how do you know the difference?
I think you know your people well enough. If, there are things in my life that if you say them to me like, hey, Andrew, you need to look out for this. You're going to trip up. You're going to get in trouble, or you're an idiot. You did this wrong. That's going to mean more than if some anonymous person, whether leaves a critique on the website or whatever else it may be. There are specific people in your life that you're just going to naturally take what they say to mean more. And then also, is it true? That's the question you got to ask is, right. Okay. Yeah. I did do that, or I didn't do that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I say this at membership class
yourself.
We have membership class coming up at Lakeview on Sunday night, and I actually bring this into membership class because it's an expectation from our members that we hold each other accountable. And I tell them all the time when people want to chat with me or have advice from me or maybe want to rebuke me, if you are not a covenant member of Lakeview Church and you just happen to have a random rebuke from me, I'm probably not going to lean in and listen. I might sit there with you for a few minutes as opposed to, let's say a covenant member comes to me, which this was the case, or an elder comes to me. I'm going to lean in and I'm going to listen because I know that they're invested and they're bought into the mission and vision of Lakeview Church as opposed to someone who just had a random thought that they felt like, I can blast him with this, which granted, that happens too. Like, that's part of the nature. We're on stage week after week. People have opinions. I get it.
I get it as well. But Timmy, I'm proud of you either way.
Appreciate that. It means a lot to me coming from you.
Well, good. It should. Because also when you take a compliment from those same people, you should pay attention a little bit more closely as well. So we are likely to do the opposite.
That's good. Right.
We really want to accept the compliment from the stranger and dismiss the rebuke from the person that should be known and trusted, when really it should be the known and trusted persons who you need to accept the rebuke from. And sure, a compliment from a stranger might mean something, but a rebuke from a stranger doesn't mean a whole lot.
It's good. That's good.
Hey, it's 12:06.
It's afternoon.
Time for lunch and all of those things. I've got grades.
You've got grades due. You've got kids trying to finish school, and I've got lunch to
but
eat.
I don't have
to get some protein in me
because Frank is preaching on Sunday.
I do have to get cracking on this, sir. I think I'm tackling an entire chapter this week because Frank was going to preach at Lakeview, but opted not to preach on gifts of the Spirit because he and I don't exactly see eye to
He
eye
doesn't
on all
believe
of the
that they
things.
exist. He he's got that, like, what is it, the Benjamin Franklin Bible, where you just take out all the parts you don't like? Where's Thomas Jefferson, whoever that was? I think Frank has one of those, right? That's how it works.
Stop it. Stop it. He was actually very gracious when I did tackle it a couple weeks ago and said it was very, very well handled, and he did not feel slighted at all. So hopefully he'll feel the same after 1 Corinthians 14 and 15 the next couple of weeks. We'll see how it goes.
Well, good. Timmy, let's do this again next week.
Yep. We'll
I
chat
can
soon.
I can talk about what it was like to not be at church, and to
Amazing.
my first ever worship service at First Lutheran Church in Clearwater, Florida.
Wow.
My kid's been there for 3 years. I've been to chapel, never been to a Sunday service.
Well, you
So,
work on Sundays.
I do. I'll let you know how it goes.
All right. Well, fam, we love you.
All right,
Talk soon.
See you then. Bye.
Okay.